Hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm Drew, exercise physiologist and acupuncturist. And today we're looking at classic yoga asana, Utkatasana, or chair pose, or a version of a squat. Now, there are lots and lots of versions of squats. And this is one of my favorite actual exercises to do. And we're going to talk about a lot of the different ways you can do it and some of the considerations that you need to be aware of if you're a teacher or if you're a practitioner. We're using the posture muscle in motion yoga app. We're in asana, we're in core asanas, and we're looking at Utkanasana or chair pose. Okay, so as usual, I'm not going to go through the entire section of chair pose. You need to jump on and get your own copy of the app because it's an amazing app, but we're going to look at some of the key slides, if you will. So just a little review of the exercise. I'll shrink me so we can get a nice overview. Here, we'll come back to start. So classic kind of squat position. And we've got a fantastic demonstration here as well. Now, the thing that makes this posture really different is that typically the feet are very close together. And then you're going to bring your arms up in this overhead position. And this creates a lot of challenges for a lot of people. Of course, in Olympic lifting, you'll do overhead barbell squats and things like that. So it's not exclusive to the yoga world, but a lot of people struggle with this exercise for a couple of reasons. So we're going to dig into that one. Let's scoot to the next one here. So the first thing, this is a really nice reminder of intra-abdominal bracing. So we've got the transverse abdominis and the pelvic floor. And if you have a look at the video we did previously in plank, we talked about the bracing and engaging transverse abdominis here. But it's a nice kind of demonstration or kind of overview of what these muscles are doing. So if we pause it. So we've got the transverse abdominis, which wraps around the horizontal fibers from the lower back, and that goes right around to the front. So it's like a belt, sometimes it's called a girdle. And then the pelvic floor you've got coming from the sacrum to the pubic bone here. And when these muscles contract, they're pulling this way. So you get this kind of contraction. And because it's like a dome shape, as it contracts, it kind of lifts up like that. The cue is cue for some reason is people to draw up. You don't need to draw it up. You just need to contract or tense the muscle. And you do that on the exhalation phase, particularly. Okay. So really key. So we come back here. So when you breathe in, diaphragm pushes down this way, pushes all the abdominal contents down this way. So as you breathe out, reverses, diaphragm goes back up and the pelvic floor comes up with it. So breathing diaphragm and pelvic floor diaphragm work together. So on the inhale, you get an eccentric lengthening, opening of the pelvic floor. You'll get an anterior tilt. So the pelvis rolls forward a little bit. You get a little bit more lordosis or lumbar extension. Okay. And then the abdominal wall will be pushed out a little bit as the stomach contents are coming down. On the exhale, it all reverses. Pelvic floor contracts and lifts. You get posterior pelvic tilting, you get the anterior abdominal wall contracting, and that all kind of pivots around the femur to create a little bit of a posterior tilt. Okay. So when you do this exercise with your breathing technique, it works really, really well. And then essentially what happens is if you do it with good breathing technique and if you align your feet correctly, you'll find a natural pivot through the femur and the knees will naturally align themselves. You don't. One of the kind of things where people go wrong is they try to force the knees into a certain line or a certain angle, where it's not so much the knees, it's the position of the pelvis and the position of the ankles, and the knees is just kind of like the in-between part that's just going to move in relation to where the femur is and then the ankle is, if that makes any sense. So it's this nice little overview of the pelvic floor. Now, when we've got the arms in the overhead position, okay, you need to use these muscles down through here. So your lower trapezius is going to pull the shoulder blade back down. The posterior deltoid is going to follow that line as well. So it's as the arms come overhead, you got to pull back down. You got to set the shoulder blade back down. So that's a really important kind of component to this posture. Now, if people have got real tight neck and shoulders or chest muscles, they're not going to be able to get their shoulder arms above their head. You can see that the humerus is kind of just in front of the ear, which is kind of a good kind of goal to have. So from this angle, you can see this nice line through the vertebrae. TVA is engaged, pelvic floor is on, and you're going to be using the back extensors here. So this kind of curve through the spine is fairly neutral, as in you've got lordosis here, you've got a natural kyphosis, and then you've got a natural lordosis, although it will start to flatten out depending on people's mobility and flexibility in the hip, knee, and ankle. Core muscles that we're going to be using will be the glute max and the quadriceps. They're the two core, what we call agonist muscles, which are the prime movers. So they're if you're doing an exercise to recruit muscles, these are the two that are going to be active and going to be used specifically. Then you get glute med, which will be a stabilizer, all the kind of core muscles, of course. Hamstrings will be active in what's called a co-contraction to stabilize knee and pelvis. And same with the calf will be definitely active to stabilize the knee and the ankle particularly. But typically the goal is always the quads and the glutes in squat. So here we have this kind of nice description of sitting bones to the rear versus knees spread forward. So here you're keeping the sitting bones is here, and you're going to push them back this way. Okay. So when you push the sit bones back, so hips back, okay, the knee angle here stays at 90 degrees, and the line of the knee is behind the toes. Now, we used to think that you should bring your knees over your toes. That was from one study back in the 70s, and it just kind of like stuck in the research world. But the knee's absolutely designed to go past the toes. So here, if you're staying fairly tall, you're going to have a bit of a knee bend past the toes. Now, what you need to do is both. So you're going to have to sit right back, and you're going to have to bring your knees over your toes, particularly if you want to get deep into your squat. Now, we used to say that, again, you want to maintain 9 degrees at the knee joint, because as soon as you go past 9 degrees, so 80 degrees or 70 or 45, like arse to grass squat, that the joint reaction force is going into the kneecap, into the patella, into the meniscus, rise quite considerably and puts more pressure onto the knees, which it does do. But if you progress your exercise slowly over time, the tissues adapt to those loading, and it's totally fine for you to do deep squats. Okay, you just need to slowly build up to that depth, the range, the motor control, the stability and strength to be able to manage those positions. Strengthening the foot will be really helpful in your stance as well. So if we kind of jump into common problems. So one of the big problems that people kind of run into is very stiff in the thorax. So if you've got stiff here, like if you're very quite kyphotic or very round upper body, you're not going to be able to straighten up, and you're going to get stuck here. So if you try and come down into the deep squat and you're getting stuck and you're getting pulled forward, having a stiff mid-thoracic can be a reason for that. Okay. So we can see here, and one of the ways to kind of compensate for that is to just bring your arms to the front. So when you have the arms up here, okay, you need lumbar flexibility to get your arms overhead. All right, and you also need flexibility in the thoracic spine to extend the spine. So as you bring your arms overhead, the thoracic spine is going to extend, or you're going to go into a back bend. So if you don't have the strength and mobility in the upper back to do that, you won't be able to maintain that position of arms overhead. So if you bring the arms to the front, it shifts the center of gravity slip more forward over the center of the feet more. You can sit back into your hips a bit better because you're a bit more counterbalanced. And then it takes that kind of pressure out of the mid-thoracic spine here as well. So often arms to the front is a really, really good option when you're doing squat. Here, this person's still at 90 degrees at the knee. Like a classical Utkatasana is all the way down. So hamstrings to the calves, butt to the ground or just off the ground. Let's go to the next one. Second common problem is these tight chest and tight lat muscles. So if you've got a tight chest and tight lats, because they attach on the arm, they're going to be pulling the arm forward and down. So they're going to be pulling the arm forward and down, and that's going to help also feed into that kind of kyphotic or rounded upper back posture. And so what you need to do is stretch the lats and stretch the chest out before you really go into Utkatasana. So in yoga, we do preparatory postures or poses or asana. So you would do things like a bridge or chest openers to really kind of mobilize the thoracic spine and start to open up the chest and the lats, kind of child's pose type stretches. So you can get the shoulder blade back, but you'd also have to do a lot of back strengthening exercises and scapular exercises. So kind of like locust or Superman type postures is what's going to be required there to help get your posture back. So, yeah. So the other thing that'll happen too is with the tight chest and the tight lats, because it's going to, if you try to bring your arm over your head, if you're really tight, it's going to make you do that. It's going to dump your shoulder forward. And so you're going to get really tight upper trapezius. And so you're going to get a lot of excessive stabilization in the neck, and it'll feel super uncomfortable. So this is a really common problem for a lot of people in modern society because we do so much sitting and working on computers, mobile devices, driving. That just encourages that kind of rounded upper back posture, which is very problematic for this particular move. I mean, the simple solution is to bring your arms to the front. But if you're really trying to get the full expression of this posture, you want arms above your head. You have to do a lot of thoracic mobility work and release the chest, release the lats, release the upper traps, then strengthen those scapular stabilizers, pull them back. Yeah, so you want these trapezius muscles because the lower traps depresses the shoulder blade. So as you're reaching up, it's always a little bit of a tricky one for people to kind of wrap their head around it. As you're reaching the hands overhead, the lower traps is actually going to pull the shoulder blade down. Now, the reason it does that is it needs to position the glenoid fossa here in the upward position to allow you to clear the acromion process. So if you don't roll that shoulder blade back, then the glenoid fossa here is not angled correctly. And so as you reach your arms above your head, you're going to jam into your collarbone, into the acromion process, and impinge the bicep muscle or the supraspinatus and creates like shoulder impingement. So part of that is strengthening the back muscles so you can get the shoulder blades back and down. So classic dips, really, really good for that. Lat pull down, chin up type movements, rows to get these back muscles really strong. Okay, let's get to the next slide. So this is what will happen. So if you've got a rounded posture, so if you're a bit more kind of kyphotic, a bit more rounded, you'll have an excessive thoracic curve, and most balance and most movements are orientated around maintaining the eyes in a level position so you can see what you're doing. Okay, so what will happen is if you're in this posture and you've got a more of a rounded back, you're going to have to compensate with excessive neck extension. So you're going to have to lift your chin, and that's going to compress the structures in the base of the head here. So they can give things like pretty gnarly headaches and compress the nerve roots coming out of the neck into the arm, into the chest, which is not fun. Or you're going to have to excessively compensate with a big lordosis here to kind of bring that angle back this way a little bit. So I do have a client who's got quite a pronounced kyphosis, and it also has a very big lordosis, and that's part of the reason is to compensate for this kind of stuck rigidness in the thoracic vertebrae. Because when you're in that kind of flex position here, the joints are closed down, so they can kind of extend and flex a little bit, but they can't rotate or laterally flex. So you're very stiff and stuck in that position. So then the head has to lift up. So here, the head has to lift up to maintain that horizontal gaze. All right. And then you're going to compress all this stuff in here, which is not going to be fun. So you get the compensation. So just be aware of that. Now we come to the big argument, knees over toes. So it's all about kind of these joint angles. So here we've got the feet on the ground. The knee is kind of behind the toes. The joint angle here is probably about 120 degrees. And the joint angle here is probably around about 120 degrees as well. But the heel is on the ground and the toe and the forefoot's on the ground here. Now, limiting factors will be the calf. So if the calf is really tight, as you squat down, the knee has to bend more. And so that means that the knee has to come forward. But if the calf is tight, it's going to restrict the ability of the knee to translate forward. So you'll get to a point where the stiff calf will stop you from squatting down. The other thing that stops people is at the ankle itself. If they've got any bony abnormalities, any bony growth in the ankle joint, they can get a bony block and that can stop them. Or if they're just very stiff in the ankle and they haven't really got good dorsiflexion or ankle bend, then they can get kind of stuck here just from stiff, tight ankles. So one way to kind of address that is to elevate the heels a little bit. Okay, that does shorten the calf a little, but that will then allow you to come down deeper and bring the knees forward over the toes a bit more. So we can see here that the joint angle with the heel on the ground with that kind of 90-degree angle at the ankle. Here we can see that you maintaining 90 degrees, but you're much higher up. So the hip angle here. But if you elevate the foot, the knee angle stays at 90 degrees here. It's the same knee angle. At the ankle stays the same, but now you can get into a 90-degree knee angle. Here it's probably more 120 degrees, and so you can get down deeper. Now the goal, depending on your goal, is to get your hips all the way down to the bottom, so you get a nice deep squat, which is very functional. If you're getting off the ground, you have to be able to kind of get your butt to the ground almost, and so that your calves will be at the back of your legs, hamstring wise. So this joint angle here almost has to close fully. It's like if you're kneeling on the floor, you want to be able to have that range of movement. So the range of movement has to come through the ankle, has to come through the knee, has to come through the hip, and then also has to come through the lower back. So depending on people's hip structures, wider pelvises, bigger lordosis, which are more anterior tilt. Okay, just change the angle of the femur coming out. For some people, they can get down deeper just with the natural shape of the pelvis is slightly different. So if your femurs coming out of your pelvis are slightly orientated forward or back, that's going to change these angles. So if this femur here is slightly elevated and turned inward, that's going to restrict your ability to come down. But if you had a femur that was orientated out a little bit further, then you'll have a lot more space to clear the femur from the kind of the acetabulum here as well. So often it's about the bony structure of the pelvis and the femur and how much clearance someone's got as well. And then of course you've got all the stability and mechanics perspective of it. So elevating the foot is not a bad thing at all, particularly if you want to train to get down deep. And then over time, if you're training your calves and your hamstrings and your quads to full range of movement with load at a way you can control the movement, you'll develop that strong connective tissue quality and you'll be able to squat down deeper. Now, I'm 50 this year and I can squat down deep all the way, ass to the grass, with slight heel elevation, do it with like a good 24 kilo kettlebell in the kind of goblet squat rack position, and it feels super comfortable. It's a really, really good, and you get a great quad contraction and a great glute contraction. Okay. And for me, I need to come into at the bottom a little bit of posterior tilt and then focus on driving up through the heel, get the glute contraction on. You can drive up through that, which is nice. Some people can get down all the way with that strong anterior tilt position. It just really comes around to the shape of people's pelvises. And slowly, I can also do it with feet fully flat on the floor, but then I need to take my feet fairly wide and angle my feet out just to be able to kind of clear my pelvis here. Otherwise, I get impingement in the pelvis. So it comes down to understanding your own body and kind of and understanding the mechanics a little bit, and then getting a good teacher or coach to help guide you through different positions to work out what's going to be best for you, because not everyone's going to be the same. And of course, there's no reason why you need to have your arms overhead. Like you can have your arms in the front, you can have a close squat position, you can be hands across Ijimajini style. The goal of the exercise is to strengthen the quads and the glutes and get full range of movement. Okay, the upper back thoracic mobility stuff, that's a secondary goal. I wouldn't get too caught up on that. So this position, so if you're doing this kind of chair squat and this is you, you'll come back. If this is you and doing the chair squat, you're getting that round upper back. You can get your arms wide ears, but you get pulled forward. Then the pelvis has to kind of roll back to compensate. And you get this excessive kind of rotation that puts a lot of strain into the lumbar spine here versus really strong anterior tilt. Okay, rotation pelvis forward. You see this nice deep back bend here. So when you're doing back bends, this is the shape you're going to create. And then as you practice your lat pull downs and your rows, you're pulling your shoulder blades back. So this is nice. So you can maintain that shape, but if you haven't got the hip mobility, you won't be able to go down low. So a lot of things need to be done to execute this move correctly. It's kind of like a good assessment as well. If you get someone to do this squat, have they got the mobility in the thoracics, in the lumbar, in the hip, knee, and ankle, shoulder to be able to get in this shape? If they can get into that shape really quickly without any coaching and cueing, you know that their flexibility and mobility is fairly good. Then you may need to work on just like technique or strength, endurance, or mobility, depending on the training goal of the person. So in like the functional movement system, the FMS, they do an overhead squat as part of the FMS. And that's one of the reasons why it gives you, someone who knows what they're doing, gives you a lot of information and how people present when they do it, about where you might need to target to kind of help people get into that shape. The other thing I'd just say here is like, you don't really need to kind of do this in real life very often. Like it's just not a posture that you're going to be really adopting in real life. You're not going to hold things above your head, squat down really deep, and then squat up again with like heavy weight above your head. So you can kind of make an argument of like, it looks good, it's kind of pretty, but like, is it? What's the point of it? The point of it is that it's a exercise to achieve good full range of movement and control. So if that's something that's important to you, it could be really helpful. It can help diagnose or kind of point you in the direction of where you might need to work on. So for this person, what I would do is I'd bring the arms parallel or across the chest, or put a weight on their chest so they've got goblet squat. This is also an issue if people are doing barbell squats, because they need shoulder mobility to kind of get their arms onto the bar. And this will be a similar thing that's going to happen. So people's squats can look pretty yuck if they don't have good mobility like this person here would have. So you need to adapt and adjust according to the person who's presenting in front of you. There's not one real specific way to do it. So if we go right back to the start and we look at this shape here, so this is a great posture chair pose at 9 degrees, ankle here. So probably at around about 45 degrees, maybe 40 degrees there. That's good. You can see the glutes and the quads are the main muscles. All these stabilizers, core, back, hemis, calves. If you want to go deeper, you have to bring your knees forward over the toes, and you're going to have to sink the butt back down. And depending at what level the person's mobility stability is, you'll notice that they go from this nice lordosis position into that kind of flexed lumbar spine position. So just things to look out for. Okay, guys, so that's a quick overview of chair pose or squat. Hope you found that helpful. Any questions, please leave a comment below. And as always, appreciate a share. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. That would be really, really appreciated. Okay, have a great day, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.